So my first question is, I have temporary lost hearing in my right ear. So this experience was very different than how I saw the first two Quiet Place films, and it's made me think about sound in a new way. So I was wondering, since making the film, how have you approached sound differently in your personal life and then also in your upcoming projects?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think in the process of making the film, you become sort of hyper aware of sound, especially because we were editing it and doing the sound design and mix in New York City. So kind of every day that you're walking around, you're like, oh, that's a little sound. Like, is that making a bubbling sound? Like you're just hyper aware of some of these things. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think it just gave me a crash course in like what how to focus on sound. Like in trying to create silence, you'd think that the answer is like, oh, just like suck out all the noise and then it's silent and that's scary or something. But like there are lots of different ways to conjure silence. Like you can actually conjure silence through just like a focus on breathing. Like if you have nothing else but breathing, suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, I feel so intimate here. Or if you have sort of like distant groans or like spatial noises, like the different sort of textures of silence was a big thing. So I mean, I think it just made me more focused on that stuff and think about it in different ways. But also it's just so much fun to like experiment with sound. Like the sound mix is one of the most exciting times to just kind of play around and see how you can conjure these different feelings. And yeah, I mean, I always loved sound, but in this case, working with Lee Sullivan, our sound designer, was like a whole other level and so much fun, and it brings so much to the movie. So yeah, just an increased focus and attention to it.
Yeah. So your two feature films, Pig and now A Quiet Place Day One, are both have characters that have a deep connection to an animal of some kind. And so I was curious if you had pets and then what you feel like these relationships reveal about the people involved.
Yeah, I grew up with pets. My mom was a big animal lover. We always had dogs and cats and hamsters and rabbits and all that fun stuff. I just got a cat 4 months ago, named Nabi. So I'm now a new cat dad, and that's been wonderful. It took me a while to feel like with my lifestyle I could like have a pet. But it's been so great having a cat. I think for me, one, I just love animals. Two, I think animals and food are really unique things to watch on screen because you can't fake it. Like if even if you're training an animal to do something, at the end of the day, like that's an animal, and you know that like they're doing a thing that like it just feels real. And that's why I really didn't want to use CGI for the cat, and it's always just a real cat performance. And it's the same with food. Like if you see an actor eating food on screen, it's like you're not faking that. Like at the end of the day, that's just that person eating a candy bar. And I've always found those sort of like basic sort of visceral connective points interesting. And I don't know, I guess I just really those appeal to me.
Yeah. I mean, clearly you can see I love my dog, but
Oh yeah.
so the my last question is your two main characters barely can communicate with each other verbally, but they develop this deep connection. Another version of this movie would have had that relationship turn romantic. Did that thought ever cross your mind in developing and working through the script?
I mean, it crossed my mind early on in the sense that I really didn't want to do that. I just knew in trying to kind of avoid some of the cliches of movies like this, sort of like finding romance at the end of the world and sharing one last kiss is like the city's like it's like I didn't want to go down that path. I wanted to find this sort of like unlikely platonic relationship, these friends at the end of the world. Um, and I don't know, that just made a lot of sense to me because I think if you add the romantic thing, then it just kind of overshadows some of the more nuanced little connections that they have. And it just is like, oh, they just like fell in love romantically, and that's why they like each other so much, rather than, oh, they really like learned to see and understand each other as human beings. So yeah, just early on, I just kind of knew I wanted to avoid that. And yeah, and there were like some conversations along the way of people saying like, "Are you sure you don't want to do a little romance thing?" And yeah, I mean, and there's different. I mean, the streaming is coming out, the featurettes are coming out, and you'll learn even more about Eric's character and some things about it's not really addressed in the movie, but in some of the behind the scenes stuff, like he's intended to be a gay man, and that was like sort of a quiet little aspect of his character that is sort of informing some of that is like this is a platonic relationship between two people that find platonic love.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Michael.
Yeah, thank you.